Hello everybody, this is TJ Scott with the Law Office of Timothy J. Scott. I'm an estate planning attorney and I can be found online at tjslawoffice.com. One common concern that I have, or that I hear a lot when people come in and want to plan their estate with me, is what is the estate tax effect of my estate? How much is my estate going to owe to the government, and how can I minimize that number if possible? But the reality is that most estates are not going to be subject to an estate tax, and the reason for that is exemption amounts. The federal estate tax has an exemption amount of over $12 million here in 2023. In fact, the exact number is $12.92 million. And if you are married, you actually get to double that number, which is just exceptional. It's almost $26 million that you get to pay, or that you get to distribute to your heirs absolutely free of estate tax on the federal level. And that's great because the estate tax rates are very high, going all the way up to 40%. So it's very nice to be able to avoid having to pay those estate tax rates, and you do avoid it on any amount under $12.92 million. Here in Minnesota, we also have an estate tax, and there's also a Minnesota estate tax exemption. The Minnesota estate tax exemption is much lower than the federal exemption. They used to be tied together, but now the Minnesota estate tax exemption is much lower, and that number is $3 million for an exemption here in 2023. So here in Minnesota, you can pass $3 million without having to pay anything in estate taxes, but on the $3 million in first dollar, you do start paying that estate tax rate in Minnesota, and that kicks in at 13% and goes up to 16%. Important to note that in Minnesota, we don't get to double that number quite as easily. With some planning, and with some pre-planning especially, you can double that amount, that estate tax exemption amount, up to $6 million. But again, $3 million is generally sufficient for most estates to pass without having to worry about an estate tax liability. If you are above $3 million, you're going to want to do some planning, and you're going to want to take that into account and make sure that you are planning your estate in a way that that you aren't going to have to worry about an estate tax burden falling on your heirs without having liquidity in order to pay for it. And there are lots of estate tax planning options. One option is giving during your lifetime, because giving has a different exemption amount, because there are ways to give without even inflicting that exemption amount. There are ways to give pretty large amounts of your estate and of your assets to the people that you love during their lifetime in order to avoid having estate tax kick in at all. Another way that you can plan is with life insurance, and there are a number of options, including just providing liquidity to your estate after you're gone, or ways that you can avoid estate tax altogether by investing those life insurance proceeds in a certain way in some irrevocable trust options that are available to you. There are other trust options that can give you more flexibility. Things like charitable remainder trusts can minimize the estate tax that's going to be due because of the charitable intent included in those documents. And there's more complex planning as well that just makes it important to talk to an estate planning attorney to find the best options for you if estate tax is something that you're worried about. Again, estate tax planning is not the most common reason for people to get their estate plan. In fact, I would say that the number one reason that most people get an estate plan in place is to make things as simple as possible for the people that they love after they're gone. That number one reason is followed closely by number two, making sure that the people that you want to receive are the people under law who are going to receive from your estate. And that would be the second reason that most people want to get an estate plan in place. Something that I've said today resonates with you. I hope that you'll reach out to me and start a conversation. Again, my name is TJ Scott. I'm an estate planning attorney with the Law Office of Timothy J. Scott, and I can be found online at tjslawoffice.com. Thanks.